this thing only makes one collider, right? But let's say just basics of the language. Evaluate is evaluate a number, right? So that could be how much energy I have. So here's how much energy I have. It could be anything else. It could be not a number value, but a sort of an object. So I could say, is this object null? Right? So is that reference set to anything? So that's what evaluate does just on its own. Check, evaluate a number. What is it? Filter, I like to just call filter is an evaluate on a collection. So if I want to check more than one thing at once, or a collection, which is these little curly braces, that is where filter comes into play. So this ship only has one collider. I mean, I'm promising, but it only has one collider, and here it is. I make it in the colliders collection. So if I wanted to say, for every member of the colliders collection, check something on it and return to me anyone who passes. Now, it won't be interesting with just one in it, but I could say filter colliders, and most frequently, I might say, which one of them is marked as a trigger. So I would say filter colliders and say, of all these colliders, give me a subset which is trigger. And on that, I could do whatever I wanted with it. So I could say, hey, in this subset, I want to check your shape or something. And this is all very imaginary. Just type in chat if you're not with me. So this is pretty much saying I could write this differently, but I could say for every collider, evaluate is trigger, and that's is trigger equals 1 sort of naturally. So evaluate is trigger. For each one, put it in a little temporary collection called subset, and then afterward, it's going to give it to me, right? So with that collection, I could say, cool. While we have wrapping kind of confounds this, but a really common thing to do would be checking collision. So of all of my colliders contacts, who am I bumping into? Am I bumping into any ships? And so that's a really common use of filter because I have a collection of contacts since a shape might be touching multiple shapes all at once. So the question here, and I could talk about repeat evaluate, but since the question was just about repeat filter, if I mark this to say repeat, that means for every member it finds, not only is it going to give me this subset, but it's going to also give me the member. So if I wanted to say for every single one, I was just doing imaginary stuff, check the shape. If I wanted to say for every collider which is trigger, maybe I want to get rid of them all. So I could say synchronize to each one and set its health to 0. So that would get rid of every collider which is marked as is trigger. So this is I just call it an iterator, or if, my Python brain says this is just saying for each. I think for each is in C# too. I don't know if it's in C, but so this is just a fancy way of saying without the repeat, if I just took that away, without the repeat, this is just saying evaluate everyone in the collection and tell me everybody who passed. With the repeat, it is a slick way to get an iterator in there and say for every member of the collection, do something. And if I don't even want to talk about the member, I could just do something arbitrary in here, right? That's a extremely silly arbitrary thing. So for every one of these, it's going to run through this flow once. And does that make sense?
Did that make sense? Meep, beep, meep to the eep.
Yeah, you let me know. Or if you have other questions, or if you want to talk about a repeat evaluate, which I have lots of actually in this ship. But hopefully that captures it. We can highlight that, and then that'll be a clip and say, if you were ever wondering what the heck filter is, that's what it is. So filter by. So if I were to write it like this, filter by is just, does this evaluate to 1? So if I were to say filter by 0, nothing would ever pass. If I were to say filter by 1, well, this is sort of pointless as is, right? What's the point of saying, give me all colliders? It makes a lot more sense when you add the repeat. That means iterate through every single collider because every member of the colliders collection will pass the filter. Filter by just means do an equation. So the equation can be 1. Oh, go ahead, Fred.
It's an evaluate on every member of the input collection. So if you evaluate 1 for every member of the collection, then they all pass. If you evaluate 0, then they all fail. And if you evaluate some expression, then they may or may not pass.
Yeah, so here I just did the sort of more common case, which is some expression, and I said, okay, well, give me the ones who are is trigger equals 1. Eventually, it's an expression, right? Like Fred said, in this, for the non-programmery people, everything is either true or false, 0 or 1. So this is going to be, if it is trigger equals 1, true, it's 1. If it is trigger equals 0 or some other number, it's going to be 0. So if I want to just be silly, I could say none of them pass or all of them pass. Makes a little more sense, again, with the repeat. Sort by is sort of an unexplored region, but because there's sort of, depends on what you want to do with it. But let's say you wanted to, what's a good example? Random sorting is what I use it for the most.
It's again an extra evaluate. And the number it evaluates to is how the set is sorted.
Okay, here's a dumb example. Sort by their, or not its shape, it's just itself. I don't know what I'm doing, but iterate over all colliders, filter by 1, sort them by their health. So is that?
So the ones with smaller health will be
first.
Will be first in the subset.
Yeah. So this just changes the order I go over them. The sort by, there's a lot of kind of nuance to how you might use it or might not. You know, you can't necessarily sort by distance because that's something that gets evaluated. But I think there's, in its simplest form, you can sort them by some number you have readily available that's applicable to each candidate. Or frequently they look like this, which is sort by whatever.
Yeah, it's an opcode markup because you can add it in front of repeat evaluate, and then that's just like do this for some number of times.
Yeah, here's a repeat evaluate. You've seen it with the egg ship. You saw it actually with the swarm ship. So this is a markup, and I can add or remove this repeat, and this is repeat for iterate the number of times equal to max charges, which is set up here. So this means do this 6 times. And then I get access to an index, which helps me do what I'm doing. So the repeat can go on either an evaluate or a filter. Yes, maybe. Just reading the rest of your question. Yes, filter by 1, sort by 0 is just give me everyone in, I don't even know what 0 does. The order they're in? I'm not sure.
That's well, everyone gets a 0 as their sort by value.
You're all equal. Therefore, you will come in some order. But if I wanted to sort them, I could. So yeah, that's valid whether or not you're repeat filtering or just filtering, because you might just want to order the whole collection. Say, hey, I want to sort you all by health. I don't want to iterate through you. I just want a sorted collection. So that's how we do it.
Sorted or sorted?
Well, if the health is 0 or less, then it's a sorted collection.